7 out of 10 people will live by 2050, require cultural capital to grow, to attract talent, ambitious people, and innovative organizations. Kuala Lumpur is no exception. Founded at the confluence of the Klang and Gombak rivers, Kuala Lumpur's initial growth was founded on tin and rubber industries before serving as a British colonial administrative center and capital city post-independence. Kuala Lumpur, rich in history, diverse in race and culture, boasts iconic colonial structures, grand temples, and mosques, elaborate residencies of visionaries that shaped Kuala Lumpur, reminding many of the city's unique multicultural past. The city's built environment has been enhanced with major infrastructure projects such as the mass rapid transit system and public amenities like River of Life, Taman Tugu, and more. In 2020, a wave swept the world into darkness, crushing everything under its weight. As time passes, Kuala Lumpur stood quietly, underutilized, and in disrepair. In response, Think City and its collaborative partners aim to build back better, for Kuala Lumpur to become livable and sustainable, seeking to reference the past while nurturing the future, celebrating the power of diversity, welcoming new creative energy to set up businesses, transforming and reversing decay through restoration and adaptive reuse of various buildings and public spaces across the district, attracting both local and international businesses to repopulate the city, boosting investment and leaving a lasting legacy for all Malaysians. While the challenge is great, we believe that there is much hope yet for the future of this city. Join us in this journey to continue transforming Kuala Lumpur into a lively, dynamic, and vibrant place, forged around culture, arts, heritage, and creativity. Kuala Lumpur, a creative and cultural district for all.
Bukit Buno is an old site, but exactly how old it is a little controversial. It is a site that was hit by a meteorite, that we know, but it was at a time when man was already in existence because we see his stone tools present before the meteorite hit the area. Lenggong was special. It held the secrets to our past.
Haga-haga dulu kita orang Lenggong saduk malu-malu. Gunung Kepala Gajah banyak paku aji, jaga bila kerabat geli tapak kaki. Ingatkan Tuan, sini banyak gua. Ada gua Kajang, ada gua Asa, gua Puteri, dekat gua Ngaum, gua Perak Men, terkenal seluruh dunia.
Before Lenggong, I worked at Gua Nya in Sarawak. It was an old site, a Paleolithic site, and a very special site. I thought to myself, if Borneo has such a site, I'm sure Semenanjung Malaysia, which links mainland Southeast Asia to insular Southeast Asia, must have been an important route for early man. So that set me thinking that I should look for a site that is as old, if not older, than Gua Nya, so that we can see the link between mainland Southeast Asia and the rest of island Southeast Asia. So I searched the literature and found that the earliest evidence of stone tools was in a site known as Kota Tampan in Lenggong. But this site was a controversial site. Some archaeologists said that these stone tools are not man-made, they're just broken pebbles. Therefore, the site is not an archaeological site. To solve this controversy, I went to British Museum and Raffles Museum, where these artifacts were stored. It was very encouraging for me to find that some of the stones were man-made. So this meant that Kota Tampan is potentially a site, an archaeological site that held evidence of our early population. On the map, Kota Tampan is big. It's a huge area, and all I wanted was a dot. So that was not easy at all. So I worked together with a geologist, the late Professor H.D. Chia, to identify, to map the area so that we will look at places that I think would have potential. That was what I did. I didn't walk on ancient lake shores. I looked at areas that I thought would hold the clues to a site. And lo and behold, we did find one. So that's the beginning of the journey into Lenggong Valley. From Kota Tampan, then we expanded onto other places. The landscape was beautiful. Lots of little lakes, big lakes, and in the mornings and evenings, it's cool. It's not like you are in any other kampung in Malaysia. It's beautiful, it's like you are in a foreign land. Very scenic, the hills, the valleys, the lakes. It was really lovely. The people, at first, very puzzled at who I was. This lady with about 10 men following her and with a pouch holding lots of cash, going to buy nails, fencing material, atap. So they asked me, kerja mana? Kerja dekat itu ladang teh. We had fun. The places where we ate, those people there were special, they treated us very well, probably gave us a bit bigger helpings than they would normally. Very kind, very nice people, very warm people. They'd invite us to weddings in the area, or they'd invite us to their house for a meal. As we passed by their house, and if the fruits are in season, they would tell us, ambil aja lah rambutan tu. It was very homey kind of atmosphere. Later on, I learned the heritage foods, and their food is different from other places in Malaysia. They use a lot of natural plants in the forest. So that inspired me to record a recipe book on special Lenggong heritage foods.
Pek ke titi Bali, ayam berjoget berjambu merah. Pucuk kemayung kemudi patah, tikam Cik Harun Cik Ali rebah. Bebek ni sebenarnya tak ada tempat lain. Kalau belah Kelantan, dia panggil colek. Keedah dia lebih kurang nak sama. Cuma kebebek ratani di Lenggau ni, Lu Perak lah khususnya, dia buat daripada bahan-bahan dia tu pelik-pelik sikit lah. Putik naka, jambu putih banyak, jatuh pisang, buah cermai. Ni utamanya cermai. Kalau ada cermai baru jadi kebebek.
The people of Lenggong are actually the descendants of the generations and hundreds and thousands of years of people taking that route from mainland Southeast Asia outwards. But sometimes people stay there longer, sometimes they don't, they move on. We find that the current people in Lenggong are different from people in other parts of Malaysia. They are a combination of culture, meaning language and way of life, is influenced by Thai. They are like a niche group leading a life and speaking a language that seems to be found in that northern part of Semenanjung, Malaysia.
succeed. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Seminar and exhibition titled Lessons from Historic Sites, Culture-Based Economic Development. My name is Rashida, and I'm your MC for today. Firstly, I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone here for taking time off their busy Monday schedules to attend to our talk today. Before we proceed with our seminar, I would like to take this opportunity to provide a brief introduction about Think City and the Aga Khan Trust for Culture. Think City is an impact organization established in 2009 to create more sustainable and equitable places for the benefit of all. Our knowledge, skills, and strategies focus on urban solutions, the environment, social communities, and the cultural economy. Think City is a wholly owned subsidiary of Hazanah Nasional, the sovereign wealth fund of the government of Malaysia. Based in Geneva, the Aga Khan Trust for Culture, AKTC, promotes debate about the built environment, cultural heritage, and importance of historic memory. It aims to propose exemplars and solutions for contemporary design problems, engage in the physical and social revitalization of communities, advance music and musical education, and connect cultures through material and intangible arts. Its current and past activities span across 12 countries, including a decade-long partnership with Think City in the Georgetown World Heritage Site. Jointly organized by Think City, today's seminar is brought to you by the Aga Khan Historic Cities Program, a flagship initiative of the Aga Khan Trust for Culture to regenerate historic areas and promote models that improve livelihoods. I believe this afternoon will provide us with a unique opportunity to hear firsthand insights from our esteemed speakers on revitalizing cities through culture and heritage, as well as lessons from cities such as Delhi, Cairo, and Georgetown on how culture and heritage can be used to deliver tangible social and economic development outcomes. Without further ado, I would like to invite our moderator and speakers to the stage. I would like to introduce our moderator for today, Hamdan Abdul Majid, Managing Director of Think City. Hamdan was actively been involved in shaping urban policy and plans in Malaysia, including more recently, Penang 2030, a state government initiative with a vision of a family-oriented, green and smart Penang. Prior to assuming his role as Managing Director of Think City, he was a former Director of Investment at Khazanah, where he led their regional office in the north of Malaysia, identifying strategic investment opportunities to catalyze growth and development in the region. This seminar will take approximately 1 hour. This will be followed by a question and answer session where you will have the opportunity to pose your questions to our esteemed speakers. Now, let's delve into the enlightening discussions ahead. Over to you, Hamdan.
Assalamualaikum. A very good afternoon, everyone. I think it's a wonderful Monday afternoon that we have gathered here at this Persatuan Architect Malaysia. And probably it's an apt location where we are having this discussion about lessons that we draw from the built environment of the past in terms of how it is there to shape and inform us in terms of the built environment of the future. Much needs to be learned. So as the MC, Rashida, has said that, as an organization, Think City has found its, charted a journey start way back in 2009 when we first started, where we focused our efforts in terms of understanding the need to reinvent and regenerate cities in Malaysia. But as we look at the issue, as the agenda about regeneration and rehabilitating urban spaces, we realize the fact that historic urban landscapes are a very fundamental part in terms of how a city will succeed or fail. The issue of identity and a spirit of a place is very significant in terms of how you are able to create distinctive value in an age where cities compete. And then the reality is that it's not nations that are competing, but rather we are the fault line where cities are the engines of growth and progress and possibility, and it is cities that are competing. The challenge that we face is always the case about how do you keep yourself at par or how do you push yourself ahead. But the only way you can reinvent your cities is actually to think about what you inherit, your natural geography, your topography, your built environment that you have inherited, your culture. So it is in this context that our work started very much in the area of trying to regenerate what we had. And we were fortunate to start our journey in the city of Georgetown, where it was listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So it made it a bit more easier with the inscription to get started. I will let Georgetown, Lawrence, share more about the journey of Georgetown in his lecture later. But this debate about conservation and development, unfortunately, is seen as what I call a contestation. Rather, the way we have looked at it is about how can conservation and development be build a symbiotic path and shape the future, shape the new. And I think that is what we have drawn from our journey together with Aga Khan Trust since 2009, has been to chart a path to unlock and reimagine futures based on what we have already have had. Be it in having cities that are intact with historical memories, or be it in places that have lost much but still have got memories of the past. And these memories of past is on which we have built and are trying to shape a future on. So we are here today to be able to share that experience, and we are fortunate to be able to have this wonderful symposium this afternoon, though it's short notice. We decided to take the occasion of the visit of our guests from Aga Khan Trust for Culture, and we are fortunate that we have here Louis Monreal, who's a very distinguished statesman who has had a career starting as a young archaeologist in the Aswan Dam archaeology work long back, and being actively involved in the world of museums from the 60s, He was the past president of the International Council of Museums, going on then to be the director, the founding director of Getty Institute, and also subsequently he led La Casa Foundation, which is a very large Spanish foundation, and had an opportunity to provide, I would probably, leadership to shape the world of arts and culture. And his success then eventually led him, His Highness, the Aga Khan Trust, had invited Louis to lead and provide stewardship to the Aga Khan Trust for Culture. And this, and for the past 2 decades, he has spearheaded, and under his leadership, I think the Trust for Culture has single-handedly transformed urban landscapes in the most hostile and difficult places, whether it be it in Mali, in Bamako, or in Kabul, Afghanistan in Kabul, or places like Herat in Gilgit in Pakistan and Lahore, and more recently in places like Delhi and other places like Cairo. And we are fortunate that we have been working together the last 15 years, and in terms of having them present to support Think City's efforts in Penang. And I would probably acknowledge here to say that we have learned much, and that has helped us to chart this journey together. And with that, let me invite Louis to start this afternoon's this lecture. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here today, here with you. In fact, I should not be occupying this place. It should be my colleague, Shiraz Alibai, sitting there in the front row, that as director of the Historic Cities program of AKTC, that will be occupying the place here. But, well, you will need to give me yeah, thank you. I'm trying to put this in motion. Here we are. And I am going to try to, very briefly, in 25 minutes, if I can, to tell you what is the contribution that an historic cities conservation program could bring to social and economic development. And I'm going to do that through a very large but quick series of images of projects that have been implemented by AKTC in different parts of the world. Although we are in Architectural Institute here, I'm not going to talk too much about architecture, but I'm going to talk about economy of those projects, economic impact, and social impact. I hope that the architects here present will excuse me for that. This is, very quickly, the coverage of the Historic Cities program in the world. I don't know for what reason, I suppose it's sabotage, is a project in Syria, in Aleppo, that doesn't lit up in the map, but you can mentally put it there. And as opposed to the usual technique in these presentations that what does is to present at the end the conclusions or the goals, I'm putting those in the front. What is the Historic Cities program aims and its expected outcomes? First is the social and cultural development. I don't think this requires any explanation. Second, it generates employment. And through some ancillary programs that we put together, like microfinance, for example, stimulates entrepreneurial activity. For example, family-based enterprise. We have built around the world, and you will see now some images, a number of public parks. And I will explain the reason for it. The reason is to create new environments of quality. But those parks are on top, self-sustaining financially. Are parks that generate revenue, and the revenue creates jobs, allows to maintain these facilities. And we have, believe it or not, parks that generate an excess of income over expenditure. We don't talk about profit because we are a non-profit institution. In places like you mentioned Bamako. Yes, in Bamako, in Mali, we have a surplus, a financial surplus in the park. We have a financial surplus in 3 parks in Afghanistan. And this is what we do to also stimulate the creation in the neighborhoods where we work of NGOs that could then invest the results of this economic surplus in our parks. Let me start by Egypt. This is going to be like a travel through a number of countries. Egypt, we started what has been the prototype and the model for our subsequent programs. The Al-Azhar Park, built in what it was a garbage dump, the Al Darasa Hill. Here you have, into your left hand, you have, wait a minute, into your, I'm looking at this screen, I don't know if it's going to be your left or your right hand, but in your left hand you had the Al Darasa Hill before we built the park with 3 enormous water reservoirs, and in the other image you have the complete park, 33 hectares, neighboring one of the poorest areas of the city, the Darb al-Ahmar area with about 110, 120,000 inhabitants. This park, first of all, attracts every year in the region of 2 million visitors. And it has a very modest entrance fee that allows families with very low income levels to use the park as the garden they would like to have at their homes. It is a place where the different groups, families meet, Christians, Muslims, and so on. The revenue, as I said, of this park, generated by a number of facilities inside the park, restaurants, cafeterias. We organize also festivals, events that produce revenue. From time to time, there are films being turned there, and the revenue of the fees paid by the production are reverted into the park. And these revenues go, here you have it in the map, go from the park to this neighborhood, Darb al-Ahmar. You will see in between the park and the neighborhood is a kind of a straight brown line with little dots. This is 1.5 kilometers of the wall built, the ramparts built in Egypt during the Fatimid and Abbasid periods. These walls were buried under tons of rubble, and they were discovered during the construction of the park. But these projects, they also bring new services to the community. Here, for example, is a medical center which is specialized in gynecology and pediatry, which we have installed into a Mamluk period building, and receives several tens of thousands of patients per year. In a derelict school in the area that we rebuilt, we created an education center where children could play with computers and so on and so forth. And apart from all that, the project also deals with the restoration of public spaces and individual important monuments in the area. For example, this is our last conservation project in Al-Maridani Mosque, where the pictures are sufficiently telling. One of the last sources of revenue that we have invented in this place with the support of the European community is a tourist route with electric cars through the neighborhood. Here you have the tourist route, which has a clientele of 95% Egyptian tourists, locals. All this has been our model that we have adapted and transformed to the needs of other countries as we were moving along in developing this historic cities program. And I would like to start by Afghanistan. We started by large public buildings. We've been in Afghanistan since January 2002. And we are in Afghanistan, in spite of the change of regime, working in the same conditions as before. But we started with large monuments in Herat. This is the Ikhtiaruddin Fort, which has been transformed into an archaeological museum that again has created jobs, created a new public. We have restored major monuments like the Abdul Ansari Shrine, Timurid period, and a bit further in Balkh, we have been restoring a most incredible 10th century mosque, the No Gumbad Mosque. It is a very, as you can see, now I'm going to allow myself to talk a bit about architecture to architects, is an adobe piece of architecture which has miraculously supported earthquakes and vandalism. And today we have protected it and restored it for future generations. But another example in Balkh is the Khwaja Parsa Shrine. And in Kabul, we have replicated the Cairo model. In your left, you have an aerial view of the Babur's garden, the garden built around the tomb of the first emperor of the Mughal dynasty, Babur. And you have here two images. The general one, where you see the tomb, which is this small white building next to a sort of a pond. And in the right, what the so-called Queen's Palace before our intervention. This is the result of the intervention. The Queen's Palace, the same view in the right, and the Babur Gardens. The Babur Gardens, when we arrived, didn't have any trees. During the wars, the civil war, in the departure of the Soviet, the local population had to cut the trees to heat themselves and to cook. So the first thing was not only to restore almost 1 kilometer of this perimeter wall of the garden that you see here, but also to plant, I think, 3,500 trees and to restore the Queen's Palace. The Queen's Palace is a center where we have exhibitions. There are artisans could sell their crafts, and also in the garden we have a number of, apart from the entrance fees, we have a number of economic resources that in turn they provide a surplus, a financial surplus. But in Kabul, we have created, with the Ministry of Culture and the municipality, something called the Babur Historic Gardens Trust, that under our management develops and operates a number of other parks. The next one, apart from the Babur Gardens, is Chihil Situn. This is an aerial view of Chihil Situn after the war. You can see there are some buildings. In fact, this was a park with a very important mansion in the middle, which, as you can see there, it was like an archaeological ruin when we arrived. And this is the park today. It's a bit like Cairo Park with a number of new constructions, sports facilities. It is a place for gathering and again generating a number of resources to food and beverage, and entrance tickets. You have here a view from the main gate. These buildings, by the way, for the architects again in this gathering, these buildings are built with compressed earth. So a very ecological, no cement, a very ecological, a very resistant, and a very good way to create contemporary architecture in certain parts of the world. We have addressed in some places projects that do not have a direct economic impact, but they have a very important indirect economic impact. For example, the restoration of the Timur Shah Mausoleum. This is the tomb of the founder of modern Afghanistan, and this building was had a tremendous problem because it had been affected by an earthquake and the dome was cracked. The building was restored, and as you've seen in the previous picture, around the building was a kind of a market created by containers. We transferred this textile market to another place and also organized that market, which created new opportunities for the merchants. And indeed, we salvaged a very symbolic monument for future Afghani generations. But our activities also, and I didn't speak about that when talking about Cairo, deal with the rebuilding of the urban habitat. And in Kabul, for example, we have been working in large areas of the city, helping the inhabitants to upgrade their houses, again using in many cases the formula of microfinance credits. But indeed, the largest and most ambitious project in Afghanistan is the Kabul Riverfront project. We have, with the support of the German government, we have rehabilitated all the late 19th century, 20th century buildings along the Kabul River. Among them, you can see in this picture, this very large, you can see until almost the end of that long street, this large compound of what it was a cannon foundry established at the beginning of the 20th century. The Machine Khaneh is its name, which is now almost finished, will be finished next June, and it's been transformed in markets, park, and a number of other amenities. And as you see, it covered the space of several hectares. This is, I'm thinking about the kind of things like that could be done in other areas. For example, you are going to be talking about Penang in a meeting in a minute about Georgetown. This is equivalent to the large go-downs in Georgetown Harbor. And we have embarked also, and we are working actively in Kabul in the conservation of the large fortress that dominates the city. I must tell you, in terms of economic impact, the Machine Khaneh, the previous project that I've shown you, employs an average of 1,600 workers every day. And that represents that 1,600 families, just during the capital investment time, are living out of this project. It's a very important contribution. And once this is open to the public, it will generate several hundred direct employment positions and will offer the capacity for merchants that don't have where to sell their wares today, or they sell them in very bad conditions in the street, to fill their let's call it pigeonhole. But we work also in emergency situations. This is one of the latest. This is a very important Timurid minaret in Herat, which as you can see in the left, is in a very critical condition. And together with experts in this kind of projects, we call experts for different origins and different specialties. In this case, experts from the Department of Engineering of the Florence University came to the rescue, because what was important is to make sure that this minaret, which is unique by its size and its period, will not collapse. And then we built this structure, which is a temporary structure, as we are reinforcing through the insides. And then it was an earthquake 6 months ago when the structure was already built. And we could say we've salvaged this minaret, because otherwise this minaret today will have collapsed. And most important, the social component. I talk about microcredit, the employment, family enterprise. But the most important, we create capacity. This picture tells it all. This is our Jan Galak Vocational Training Center in Kabul. And those are students of one of the promotions of this center. And what they have there are models. You see there are some models. They are models in wood, created by the wood workshop. But we have workshops of wood, carpentry, textile, weaving, masonry, metal, etc., etc. And you see men and women, young men and women, follow this training there, and they found with their capacity a modus vivendi that allows them to progress in life. Let me take you now to what we do in India. In India, we started with the. Let me look at my watch. I think I have still perhaps 7 or 8 minutes, if you don't mind. In India, we have started our projects around one of the very famous monuments, which is the prototype. Thank you very much, Hamdan. The prototype of the Taj Mahal. This monument is the mausoleum of the Emperor Humayun, built about 100 years before the Taj Mahal, and certainly the inspiration for the Taj Mahal. This is a building that you can see in the map, is in the lower right side of this plan, and we decided to develop a very major central project in the center of Delhi, which includes, first of all, this light green area of the Humayun's tomb complex. To the north, up in the map, in the darker green, we join to this terrain what is called the Sundar Nursery, a nursery created during the British period to grow plants for the public buildings of the British administration. And then the two projects, the purpose of these two projects was to work as an engine for social and economic development of what you see in the left, in the lower side, this village called the Nizamuddin Basti, which is a Muslim settlement around the tomb of a Sufi saint, Nizamuddin Awliya. We are now operating, let me give you some pictures first of Sundar Nursery. This is, the park was opened 6 years ago, and we recover in the park. The park was conceived simply as a nursery, but the park includes a number of important Mughal funerary monuments, which were built near, at the same period, and near the Humayun's mausoleum. And here you have some images of some of the monuments restored through the activity in this park. But the important thing was to translate to this village, today's village, which has been absorbed by the growth of Delhi, to transmit all these stimulus. First of all, to improve the conditions of the schools, the school curricula, to create a crafts program, to create also, we created a medical service that deals with about 10,000 patients per year. And the result, as in Cairo, is the same. The Sundar Nursery has created a lot of employment and is self-supporting in financial terms. I must tell you that in between the two parks, the Sundar Nursery and the Humayun's tomb mausoleum, we have built an underground museum that will be opening in July this year, which will be, again, creating employment and offering new incentives for tourists, both local or foreign, and for the citizens of Delhi to visit this area. Now, we work also not only in Afghanistan, but also in other post-war countries like Syria, where, in fact, our activities were interrupted during the civil war. Here you have these two images. The image of the right is the pedestrian area that we built around the famous Aleppo citadel. This work has been partly destroyed by the hostilities that took really a toll. Here is the plan of Aleppo. The dotted line marks the limit of the city, which is in the World Monuments List, today in the World Monuments List in danger. And the number 2 in the center marks the center of the citadel and the area where we built all this pedestrian area. And now we are working in the reconstruction of the old city in Zone 1, which includes, among other things, the Great Mosque and the souks. The souk of Aleppo is the most important civilian piece of Muslim architecture of the Middle Ages that exists in the world. And this was severely affected by the war. You can see in the left side one of the areas of the souk after the war. And we decided to deal with this problem because the souk, obviously, is the basis for the family, the economy of many families of Aleppo. Families that own perhaps one little shop, but that shop is their way of living. So you can see in this in color all the areas that since we started again this project in 2007 have been restored, allowing to bring back into place the operation of the souk and the turnover of about $30 million that represents the microeconomy of the souk per year, and about 300 shops that have been rebuilt. The images here are self-explanatory. You see the before and after of what has been achieved in the souk. And I couldn't resist to put you this image, which is a bit fun, of how the souk has come back to life. And finally, I would like to show you a few images of what we've done in Pakistan, starting in the northern areas. With the areas in the Karakoram, where we started by acquiring or getting a concession of use for 99 years of historic buildings, like the Kaplu Palace, the Kaplu Palace that you see now in its restored phase. This is now a side museum. The Shigar Fort. The Shigar Fort is a hotel, which a boutique hotel, which has brought to the area a number of new jobs that has created capacity, local capacity to manage the employment. This is the survival of this hotel is, although the seasons are difficult, the access is difficult in winter, so the hotel is a seasonal hotel de facto. Its viability is guaranteed because it belongs to the Serena Hotels chain, which is managed by the Aga Khan Development Network. We have restored also places like the Altit Fort, and in all these areas we created women's cooperatives that create crafts. We help them to make sure that this craft is of a quality that has international markets. So it means that our activity reverts also in commercial capacity in these communities. The same thing of the Baltit Fort. And here a kind of a picture of our team in the left and some views of what is the traditional living in these areas. The most important project today in Pakistan, however, is in the city of Lahore, which is again a city included in the World Heritage List. We started in 2005, but with more emphasis as from 2012. And then we have attacked the restoration of public spaces and monuments along the central axis of the city, called the Royal Way, that starts in Delhi Gate and to the fort. We, again, like in Kabul, we have rehabilitated housing, providing microcredit, and we have done infrastructure. I must tell you that in most of these places, we work on the basis of public-private partnerships with the municipality, with the Ministry of Urban Housing, etc., etc. And that allows to combine the capabilities of these public administrations with our own competences. And then we have restored buildings like this Shahi Hammam, which is a wonderful 17th century bathhouse. Look at the incredible decoration. And obviously this is bringing to Lahore, is making of Lahore a city of new cultural incentives. The tourism has increased. And we proceed in all these cities to make a baseline service that tell us how, since we start a project, the family economy is evolving, has increased, and how the things are progressing. We are now in this enormous fort, the Lahore Fort, this is our next endeavor. We have completed now this parts of the project, and in particular, a 400 meters long wall decorated with polychrome tiles, which is a unique representation of Mughal art. This is before conservation, which required a lot of technical prowess, and this is during restoration, and you will see here and the before and after, which is quite self-explanatory. And this is going to be one of the major attractions for both national and foreign tourism in Lahore, with the consequent impact in the local economy. We are also involved in the restoration of all these forts, and the fort receives today 5 million visitors, but our problem is that with all these restorations, we need to develop a management system that could absorb a growth of at least 2 more million visitors in the next 5 years. And this is the level of satisfaction that represents this picture of the visitors. And I think just summarizes what AKTC has done in the past few years and how cultural heritage could be a catalyst for development. Thank you.
I think, Luis, that's a wonderful, what I call a quick journey to the world of conservation in some of the major historical sites of importance. And I think what definitely I draw inspiration of this, the complexity and the challenges on site. And probably these are some things maybe you can speak a little more later in terms of how do you deal with both in terms of the bureaucracy, the political structures, and also maybe what I would call ensuring delivering projects on time to budget and making sure that they are sustainable. Food for thought when we start our Q&A session. Sorry, I'm just starting a little earlier with Q&A. While Luis, you can reflect on it, I thought it gives me an occasion to introduce architect Lawrence Loh, who doesn't need any introduction to the architect community, particularly here in PAM, who is a fellow member of PAM. As you all know, Lawrence is a product of AA in London and has extended experience in the built environment world. Particularly, I think he has developed a passion in the world of conservation and has become an icon in the country. He has been the past president of Badan Marisa Malaysia and the Heritage Trust of Malaysia, the Heritage of Malaysia Trust. He provides advocacy as well as advisory services. But most importantly, I think he is also has won, probably led projects that has won major recognitions, not only in Malaysia but globally, with namely the UNESCO Heritage Awards for the conservation of the Blue Mansion in Penang, for the conservation of Stadium Merdeka, the Cheng Hun Teng Temple in Malacca, the Suffolk House in Penang. And also in 2010, he also was shortlisted for the Aga Khan Awards. Without much further ado, let me invite Lawrence to share the journey that he has made leading the conservation work in Penang.
Thank you, Hamdan. Let me just go through this. Thank you, Luis, for a very enlightening demonstration of the ability of Aga Khan Trust for culture. I think we need a breather, right, to just think about what he has spoken to us about and to look backwards and forwards into the projects that he has done, right? It's been very dense. I would say that it's very inspirational, very aspirational, and I think he has shown great leadership in leading the Aga Khan Historic Cities program, which I'm a great admirer of. But most importantly, I would use a keyword there, which is also a very innovative organization. And that, in fact, has been the driving force in our associationship with Aga Khan. Now, we signed a memorandum of understanding, I think, how many years ago? A decade ago. You know, it's been so long. Luis would like to say that everybody looks a lot younger. If you look at how I'm done today. Okay. I'm just trying to distract myself. And taking the lead from what Luis has said, I think I would like to start by doing a conclusion, right? Now, when I say innovative, let me show you some things that we have been doing in Penang. We have actually convinced the Penang state government to invest in restoring the beautiful moat around Port Cornwallis. But what is the key point that I took away from all of this? How do you build a moat and restore a moat that is waterproof, watertight, right? Built out of totally local materials, sourced locally, with a very low carbon footprint, right? Built by a master builders team that has been assembled in Penang. Francesco Serravo is here, together with other colleagues, originally working in Cairo, right? And they were actually transported to Penang to help us do what we call really high-end conservation work. And this is my takeaway. How do you build a moat that is waterproof and watertight without the use of modern materials and cement and waterproof membranes, etc., etc.? I mean, it is something that we as modern architects could never contemplate. But this is now happening in Penang. But the final point about it is that because we are forced by the market to respond to architects, engineers, contractors who refuse to do it in the conventional, traditional way, but would like to use modern materials and techniques. We had to industrialize our methodologies and materials. We had to invent what we call pre-mixed mortars so that the modern construction community can actually now operate, right? And so that's why I say it's innovative. Besides traditional innovation that has happened thousands of years before, we have had to respond to the modern times. And all this is through our association with AKTC, right? They brought us to the place where we had to create a pilot moat module. Sorry. Back. Let me find it. Oh, they got it wrong. Never mind. And eventually we ended up with a very beautiful moat, which is half completed and which will be opened middle of this year. And that's because of our associationship with AKTC. So I say thank you, Luis, for really sharing with us over these past 10 years. So I would like you to look at the rest of the slides in relation to the term that we have used, culture-based economic development, which AKTC has done brilliantly in all their jobs. What we are doing in Penang is very minuscule compared to that. So if we look at this concept of World Heritage, it's about looking at the outstanding universal value that requires protection. And this is the starting point. But let's look at it through the lens of the idea of culture-based economic development, and that's what I'll be focusing on. So here we have excerpts from the World Heritage Center website, which talks about the integration or protection of cultural and natural heritage. But more importantly, it talks about adopting measures which gives this heritage a function in the day-to-day life of the community. And that is what we are focusing on. And that's what AKTC is focused on. We look at the historical trade routes, how Malacca and Georgetown became really the hub within the trade route and the changing of the monsoons. Very early maps of the Peninsula Malaya and Penang. A map that we have used in the preparation of the inscription of the World Heritage Site. Very early view from top Penang Hill, looking down onto the Cape, a view of the Cape. Now this is before World Heritage listing. (1807) and a map of today with the core and buffer zone boundaries. It was inscribed as Malacca and Georgetown, historic cities of the Straits of Malacca, and I think there are fundamental problems with that definition, but I won't go into it today. But I called it Georgetown, a city on the maritime route, which is a new way of looking at connectivity and connections to other places. The core and buffer zone. This is the statement of outstanding universal value. I won't read through it, it's way too lengthy, but I just put it up as a reference. But we are inscribed under criteria 2, 3, and 4. But let me go back 10 years before World Heritage inscription. In 1998, or 20 years, am I right, 20 years, Penang Heritage Trust actually applied for Georgetown to be listed as one of 100 most endangered sites in the world. That's to draw attention to what was happening in Penang. I remember immediately the chief minister phoned up and said, "What the hell are you all trying to do?" And I said, "Well, you're not doing anything about it, so we just thought we'd prod you a bit." But he was very sporting about it. At the same time, World Monuments Fund, who actually recognized the work that we are doing, actually gave us money to restore a building. So these are the things that influenced, the idea to inscribe Penang as a World Heritage Site. In the year 2000, in the year 1990, I started work on this building, right? Never believing that it could reach the height of its iconic value today. But it came out of belief that what is precious to us, what's important to us, should ultimately be given due consideration. Now today, if you Google, you get 6,021,026.21 million results. It's just gone way through the atmosphere, right? But that got me starting thinking about the rest of Penang. If a single building can kickstart a process like that, what would the whole city do, right? And so the economic value of Georgetown has really, really multiplied, almost unbelievably, but because of an idea. But it started out as a single building, derelict, forgotten. In the process, as we restored it and got it ready, the whole area around it started to regenerate itself. This was voluntary adaptive reuse and conservation by individual owners who knew nothing about World Heritage listing, but they just followed the trend. And so the surrounding area actually regenerated and came alive. So in the process, it became a project that set a benchmark for Penang, perhaps for Malaysia. Around the same time, before we got World Heritage listing, under Hamdan's direction and guidance, we actually started something called the Georgetown Transformation Program, and we created this concept note. I see several people in this room who were involved with it then, 2008. I'm glad you're all still around. Very familiar faces, including Amna there. But this was a proposition. We looked at 12 themes, right? Too long to read out, but 3 pertinent chapters. We looked at Georgetown as a catalyst for Penang's regeneration, Penang as an ambitious, globally connected city, and new city-making paradigms, which now becomes the calling card of Think City itself. We look at it, Penang, as a laboratory for sustainable futures that serve the bottom billions. And we landed an idea that Penang needed a city-centric strategy. And as Hamdan mentioned earlier, it is a competition between nations and regions, and it's not between nations and regions, but between cities. So decided Georgetown needed a new plan to regenerate, to build human capital, and to turn it into a knowledge-centric economy. So always concentrating on the term economy. We saw opportunities for new growth because it is right in the center in relation to the Bay of Bengal and other regions. And we just said we'll use Georgetown World Heritage Site as a lab. We came up with this plan, and we had 4 nice words. We called it fast, ease, flow, and click. And what we actually facilitated and accelerated and supported and transformed the city with the low-lying fruits. And this became the model for Think City, which was kickstarted by Khazanah in 2009. This has previously been mentioned. So from 2007 until 2013, we managed to create Think City. We managed to set up a grants program, and eventually we seeded 206 projects and committed 16.4 million in those times. I think this really sparked off the regeneration of Georgetown itself. And it actually was empowered by the fact that World Heritage listing would bring a great difference to Penang. This set of 6 advantages was something I was actually compelled by the state government to sell to all the NGOs, to all the different bodies, to all the business communities. So I had to fudge it in one way or another. So I spoke about economic returns through appreciation of value, about it being a niche market, so new businesses, and that has been proven in other World Heritage sites, that there's an increase in tourists. It will give you a prestige above the rest. New markets will evolve, and there will be improvement of the public realm. And if I go back to the first one about economic returns through appreciation and value, I think I was rightly or wrongly responsible for at least getting 1,000 more shophouses bought, right? And I literally said during all these presentations to the public, if you have money now, you have a property, give it to the bank, get all your money out, buy anything inside, and you will make 10 times. And fortunately, those who took my advice did. I never took my own advice. So this has been my journey and the journey of Penang and Malaysia, going from first building conservation and then to urban regeneration. So this is the end result of the process. Visitor arrivals have increased annually by 15%. It's become the top choice of Malaysia, my second home residence, and new investment and creative industries have emerged. Plus, the knock-on effect is that now, for the first time after the creation of Rasa Side Hotel by the Shangri-La Group, all the global brands have come to Penang. And it's created the biggest traffic jam you've ever seen. But it's also inspired other people, like the Hinbus Depot, if you've ever gone there. And in Mission House, we also have used it. These are just very, very quick examples. And Khazanah itself decided to invest and position itself within the World Heritage Site. So they took over the lease of UAB building, and we are there today. And it's become the hub of a new creative and cultural center. The interesting thing about Think City is that it straddles government, communities, and the private sector. To the government, they think we are government. I don't feel like one. The communities, we communicate with them, and also with the corporate sector. And we are somewhere in the middle, which we do all the brokering. We had four areas of involvement: physical conservation, cultural mapping, capacity building, and enhancing shared spaces. Now, when I look back at our career, this is actually a very naive way of looking at it. But it was inspired by the bottom-up approach in Penang, right? We started with physical building, and then we went into creating shared spaces. We looked at being advisors to the government, but we also took note of the bottom-up approach of the NGOs in Penang, right? The sketch at the top right is the sketch I did, because the Justice Department of Malaysia wanted to put a 7-story building in the foreground compound of the courthouse. So we actually started a street protest, and eventually they agreed to bring it down to 3 stories. So now it seems, not very consequential, but at that time, it really got us into a lot of trouble with the Ministry of Justice. But why a grants program? Because if you go back to the original idea in the Georgetown Transformation Program, we talked about fast. And this was the fastest way to see sort of activity within the World Heritage Site or in any environment. And so this has, in fact, become our modus operandi in many places. I mean, it shows that there's sustainable development, there's private-public partnerships, and we incentivize private property owners as opposed to the government. Example of physical conservation. We did conservation for, public housing. We restored things like the Captain Klingmoss Dome, and we started greening the streets. We even did wayfinding for the city. Capacity building, as I mentioned, different sort of programs, working with associations like ArtEd, did a lot of cultural mapping, and I think we printed more books in this 10 years than we have done in Penang in the last 200 years, so it was a great achievement. These are some of the titles. But at the same time, in 2008, Georgetown was listed as a UNESCO cultural site. It was actually already bottoming out in a state of decay. So we really had to manage that process. And these are just the little snippets of what has happened since World Heritage listing. We are called the world's top 10 cities for street food. Everybody comes, part of the traffic jam, that's why. But we have built up very strong partnerships with local government, international agencies, and foundations. This just shows you the different projects that got approved. And this is just a chart of the direct benefits we brought to the city. But a clear indication of progress, if you like to call it, is that the density of hotels has increased from 2009 to 2019. You can see there's a huge jump. Restaurants and bars. In fact, if I did one of 2024, I think the map on the extreme right will be all red. But it has also reduced the residential population, so there is a downside, right, to World Heritage listing. But the public realm projects are those that we are really proud of. And in fact, this project we did with the help of AKTC experts. We restored a park, which then became the model for public realm improvements. And the latest addition to Penang is that we worked on the North Sea Wall at the Esplanade. You can see that the wall was crumbling, and we, in fact, then turned to AKTC again and said, can you identify some experts who can help us? And a gentleman called Manfred came, and he taught us how to do gravity wall construction. And this is the result. When it first opened, there were traffic jams for one whole month because everybody wanted to drive past this place. And in fact, to Penang people, it's like, what's happening in this place? You know, why is the jam starting all the way from the courthouse? And they couldn't figure out. And they just follow this crowd, right? And all it's happening is that they're turning into the Esplanade and turning out. But really, it became so iconic that today, every day it's occupied. And it's just a seawall. But you can see how when you really develop a model to improve the public realm, which is really our mandate, right? Not the private interiors or places, but the public realm. And when you invest in the public realm, people start to believe that things can change. And I think we are the agents of change. I mean, this is just beautiful view with nothing else, right? And this is a morning sunset. But what has happened is that the cruise ships have also started to come back. And they've become even more ambitious because they're finding that more people want to go to Penang. And we've started looking at a creative and digital district in Penang, which now also is happening elsewhere. So I think importantly, we go to the second sentence. It's about well-planned and organized and respecting sustainable tourism principles. They can bring important funds to the site and to the local economy. And that is something we cannot avoid. Tourism will happen. And the figures show that cultural tourism is the fastest growing sector globally. But this is what it brings to Penang, right? It brings you a cruise ship that is the length of one city block, and you start counting the floors, you wouldn't believe it. I counted one day and it's 18 floors high. 2,000 tourists minimum per ship. But that's now what we face, right, in the port. So there's the upside and there's the downside. But in a decade of urban regeneration, we have arrested and reversed the decline. In the hollowing out of Georgetown, we have influenced thinking, and we've been doing urban regeneration, getting it both in policy as well in practice. And we talk about the spillover effects, which Luis mentions, that is so important. And because of this, we have been able to rethink our elements of involvement in city making, right? So we see ourselves not about just physical conservation. We look at spatial space, we look at people, environment, we look at economy. So we have started to shift and change our emphasis. And we have started becoming more ambitious about just not being in Penang, but throughout the whole of Malaysia. And these are the principal things that we are doing now. We base everything is evidence-based. We have prepared strategic master plans. We have developed a holistic approach, right, towards space making. We have learned how to activate cultural assets. And we have created partnerships and network of experts. And here is a gentleman, a master builder, who in fact has helped us change our whole approach to conservation and the use of materials. And it's really, at the end of it, is what we call culture-based programs that really look at economic development. Even during COVID, we were still looking at it, about being more resilient and inclusive. And we're shifting from quantity towards quality and diversifying cultural tourism products, etc., all looking at how to look at the post-COVID era. And now this has started to really blossom into full-grown programs. And because of our position, we started looking at where is the confluence of ideas. We started a program called Northern Region Archaeotourism Network Program. It really looks at leveraging on Malaysia's unique cultural, tangible and intangible assets, basically as enablers for economic resilience and socio-economic growth. We look at the whole archaeological network all the way from north, ending south in Ipoh, located specifically more in terms of Lengkong Valley. And I'm glad to say that Professor Emeritus Dr. Zoraina is here. In fact, she made the whole thing happen, right? And there was a beautiful video at the beginning of the event. So we have actually developed this network, and you can see from the notes that it's very intensive. Celia is here; she was the lead in it. And if you look at it, the themes about culture, nature, and archaeology, and we had really did over 60 programs in 1 year. So I would really like to congratulate her. So these are the results from the program. So it's not about place-specific like Georgetown anymore. It's actually looking at the whole northern corridor, something which a very small organization is trying to do a lot, but I think with the right idea, with the right model of economic development, we can actually spread our feelers a lot more outwards. So we looked at places like in Bojang Valley, and already there were, 6 or 7 people ready to work on a single site, doing interpretation, integrating technology to improve storytelling, doing content creation. Right? And this has become pivotal in a place like Wang Kalian. Even I, who live so near Perlis, never knew of its existence. And it's one of the most unique sites in Malaysia. Projects in Lengkong Valley itself. Right? We were very ambitious in saying that perhaps we should actually try and give more prominence and management to a World Heritage Site that in fact has found it very difficult to kickstart its prominence and outreach. And then we have also extended it to Kuala Lumpur. We are looking at the creative and cultural district, which is focused around the historic core, right? And looking at the early maps of Kuala Lumpur, you can see that it is basically still very intact. And in fact, it's a program that we are working very, very consciously about making a sort of impact in KL. And the federal government is behind us. So the vision is actually to create inclusive, authentic, and viable creative and cultural places that knit together the historic fabric to enhance visitor appeal and livability. Simple, but I think very, very challenging to us. Right. So now we've started on a journey to ensure that this vision is delivered. We are looking at strategies to realize this, right? What we use in Penang and with the archaeotourism, we are now applying in KL. So it's a model where economic development at a social and inclusive level is the key to really building communities and bringing them back to and giving life to spaces. this is just showing you the ecosystem where we're talking about involving designers, communities. We need brand ambassadors, galleries, event managers. We're looking at building owners, government agencies. We're looking at tourists, visitors, local. I mean, it's a very ambitious shopping list, right? But I'll end with a very simple one. It's a beautiful structure restored in the fort. And I think this is a reminder about where we are coming from and where we should be returning to. Right? Thank you.
Thank you, Kamala. I would like to first thank both the presenters for sharing us a wonderful journey and bringing back memories in terms of how far we have come. But probably I'll start our conversation. I think, the conversation is focused about the role of culture in economic development and how a culture-based economic model can be a new source of growth and a new approach to how cities and regions can think about in terms of job creation, social inclusion, and sustainability. Now, as we practice and we execute this, maybe you could share, how is it that it has been in terms of convincing what I call decision makers and leadership, in terms of, sometimes it's very unknown because these projects are not, can be done within the election cycle. Sometimes it takes multiple election cycles. It gets through, it gets stuck along the way, funding, shortfalls, and all kind of challenges, issues on conservation and so on. So maybe if you can share some reflection in terms of how is it that what is it that we probably are able to share as lessons from this journey?
Yes, the problem when we talk about projects based in cultural heritage in the urban context in major cities is, as you said, Hamdan, that this is not instant coffee. These things will take time, will take much longer time than what I call the political cycle. And then you need to convince decision makers, which are that they have to have two conditions. They have to be visionary and they need to be generous. First of all, they need to be visionary to understand ideas which are still abstract of how a city could develop its cultural heritage as an asset. And at the same time, they have to be generous in terms to say the glory of the results is going to be taken by my successors. So it is that's the first thing. The second thing is that you have very good arguments to convince politicians. You need to look not to reinvent the wheel. You need to look at what is happening in the rest of the world. What cultural heritage as an economic asset is yielding to different countries. Let's look particularly to old Europe and how in the past 30 years at least, the European countries have created a cultural heritage-based economy. Think about Italy, France, the United Kingdom, Spain, what the cultural tourism represents in those cities. What is the return, for example, of museums? Look at the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao. A modest, what looks today as a modest investment by a local government has put this city in the map and has given the city a completely different economy. That was a broken industrial city. And this now today is based on a magnet called the Guggenheim Museum Bilbao. And I can say the same thing for Paris. Paris has many attractions, but when President Mitterrand decided to make the Great Louvre, he multiplied by 10 the audience of the museum. And there are data that you have at your disposal, and you can go to your politicians. And they are a bit visionary and a bit generous, perhaps they will understand.
Lawrence, do you want to share some? Your reflections from more from a local context.
Well, yes. I'm going to speak about my own experience and what it came out of. Actually, it came out of belief. Belief that our roots, our culture, has a very strong basis of, if you want to say, a reason for living, okay? And through those traditions, through understanding our roots, we are able to create, actually enrich ourselves. I can't talk about it in any other way. But having gone that path, I feel so much richer as a person in terms of my experience. And I've been exposed to invaluable capital, right? Not just in terms of financial capital, but in terms of intellectual and cultural capital. And I just believe if you believe in something and you carry it out and you go at it full-heartedly, not caring where it takes you, but that's what I did with a single mansion. It has changed the whole paradigm of Penang, right? Why? I cannot rationalize it. But I know that when it became the tipping point of belief, right? So when we got the World Heritage, when we got the UNESCO Heritage Award in the year 2000, guess who I went to see? Okay. I went to see the Chief Minister. I said, why is it now when you bring guests to the house, you say that this is Lawrence, a famous architect in Penang? And already I was doing good work, I think, before that time. So I said, what made you change your mind? He said, well, you didn't win an award at that time. So it's simple, right? So that creates belief, and that convinced me that if we go for something bigger, and that's why I said at the beginning, what AKTC has done, unfortunately, I'm selling them not Penang, not Think City. It was visionary, it was inspirational, and it was aspirational. And by being exposed to them at a very young age, right, they started in the 1990s, I started to look at what they were doing. And I've followed their progress ever since. So it's leadership that's important. Leadership in the right place, and we will achieve the results that we are fighting so hard to do.
I probably want to take some questions from the floor. I'm sure that some of you would like to get further clarification on what has been shared. While I wait for you all to kind of put together your thoughts, I thought I wanted to ask something very, what do you call, sometimes we take it for granted. But why do you value culture? Why do you think cultural heritage matters? Or what's unique about cultural heritage?
First of all, cultural heritage is identity. And is our own identity when we look at our cultural heritage, but is something that allows us to understand better other people's identities. And that's the important thing about cultural heritage. In one hand, you identify yourself with your own heritage, but on the other hand, you learn from the heritage of others, and is a vehicle to respect the differences between cultures, between societies. I know about many people that make a tourist trip and go to a country, and suddenly they come back home saying, oh, I didn't know that in Malaysia there were such a nice buildings, such a nice cities. They came here because of, I don't know, the natural environment or the beaches or the shopping or whatever, but they discover through cultural heritage another dimension that allows them to understand the others. And I think this is fundamental in a plural world, and every time more pluralistic. And at the same time, a world which is in some areas getting more radical, more intolerant. So there is a message of pluralism in cultural heritages in plural. And that's why the World Cultural Heritage is so important in its diversity.
Lawrence, I think you have many. I think you have in my conversations with you. You always speak about spirit of place. Why it matters.
You're asking me for a 2-hour lecture. No. I'll do it the other way. I've always sensed that there's something more than just the built physical environment. I always sensed, maybe more than sensed, when I visited old buildings, there's something very unique about the spirit of place. Words that architects struggle with all their lives, I think. We use the word sense of place, etc. Whatever it is, we cannot put our finger on it. And I remember there's one ICOMOS event where the subject matter was spirit of place. I didn't go. Somebody else borrowed my definition, presented it at that huge conference. I only downloaded the 200 over papers. I only found 2 papers that actually helped me understand it. But what I did was, after I worked with the Cheongfort you mentioned for 10, 15 years, and it started to take on a life of its own, whether you call it mythical or whether you call it actual, I had to dissect it. And really, it's all the elements that you see in a single building, in a single place, that conveys the sense of what everything about it is, right? The architecture, the use, the myths about the place, the stories, and the continuing engagement of people within that space. So it's about being alive. And having learned from a physical project, I now bring it to a whole new area in terms of placemaking, in terms of area regeneration. And when I go into a place, I will ask that question. How do I feel the spirit of the place? Is there such a thing? Maybe it's a myth, right? Maybe it doesn't exist. But there is a difference between something that calls out to you and some other place that doesn't, right? And I think other people have other definitions of it.
Could I just take questions from the floor? Prof, yes. Prof. Zuraina.
Sorry, yeah. Hamdan, it's not a question, but it's just to say that as researchers, we can just go up to a certain level, bring it up to UNESCO World Heritage status. But I'm just so impressed at this afternoon's enriching experience where I see it's been taken up to another level where only professionals like you all can do it. And then we see it at the global level where Louise Monreal gave us examples of what can be done. And I'm just very, very happy to see where before we did not have the level of bringing it up to the economic community level, global level in a different way through tourism. So I think it's very necessary and very important, and I wish you well, and I hope that this can be done for Lenggong, this can be done for Malacca. These are areas that need it from your experience in Georgetown. I think it's a tremendous job, tremendous experience this afternoon at the national level as well as at the global level, what we saw from Lee Monreal's presentation. And I do hope that there will be the government support for this. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. I think I appreciate, I think our efforts is always built on knowledge. And I think the knowledge that researchers and others play is probably the foundations of what we are able to actually chart the journey. So I probably want to acknowledge the fact that it starts with people like you. If I can take more questions from the floor, if there's anyone here who would like to, ask Lawrence or Lewis anything specific, because yes.
Hi, sorry. It's an in-house question. I'm Melissa. I work in the strategy and analytics pillar at Think City. But I had a question. Just wondering and looking at all the wonderful projects in Georgetown, Cairo, everywhere. I was just wondering if the gains or the benefits of culture-based economic development, does it always have to be tourism focused? Is there a way for us to do this or other ways to work on this without giving our cities over to tour buses and cruise ships and whatnot? Is there a different focus for us? Thanks.
Anyone in the panel who wants to respond?
There is a big problem here, and it's also something that requires a clear decision-making. I think if you look at the case of Venice, you mentioned the ships, that's why I'm mentioning Venice. I think the Venetians today are all convinced that the cruises in Venice is a tremendous error. And what is the problem here is to go towards a mass tourism that doesn't leave sufficient resources to compensate for the erosion, I will call erosion, that they create in a city. I think the cruise problem is a particular one. People arrive to a city, disembark, 3-6 hours, don't consume much, and go. So the important thing is to develop a strategy and take decisions to implement a strategy of a tourism of quality. Tourism of quality doesn't mean an expensive tourism. It means tourism of quality at different levels. The people who could spend little, but to make an offer for them that is commensurate to their capabilities, and so on and so forth. There is a movement, again, I think here is a kind of a décalage between the thinking here and what is happening in other countries. In my own country, in Spain, the municipality in Barcelona is not allowing to build a single more hotel. Bed and breakfast, not authorized, no new bed and breakfast. Cities arrive to a saturation, and you need to take decisions. You need to measure what is the point of saturation. And how to cope with it? Well, you need to be creative and to think what other tourist offers. How could you disseminate the tourism? Let's talk about the case of Georgetown, Penang. Georgetown has, Penang in general, has a tremendous opportunities, what you say. There is the other side. There is the island itself, and the other side with all its archaeological immense sites. Think City is for several years now thinking about a project for the two sides of the bay. That's intelligent thinking. What is will be a disaster is to concentrate everybody at the same point. I show in my talk, I show one of the last pictures. It was all these people gathering. It was an aerial view of all these hundreds of people in the gate of the Lahore Fort. Lahore Fort for us is, to put the problem into our own realm, is a big problem. How are we going to manage a non-stoppable demand for visitation that will grow from 5 to 7 million visitors? You need to find formulas. And massification of tourism, both in the cultural as in the natural sites, will be a disaster.
No, I think definitely, if I can just add to this, in economics we learn the notion of increasing returns and diminishing returns. So the yardstick about how a place succeeds or fails is also a function of how you manage how tourism is managed. You know, everything requires to be governed. I think absence of governance means anarchy. So we always know the fact that markets works on the extremes. But tourism is also, I'll probably say, is a necessary, quote unquote, I should say, I don't like to use this word, but necessary evil. In a sense that it requires visitors, but tourists would like to go to places where the locals are. So don't start with tourists at first, but rather make a place successful for the locals, make it for the people, and eventually tourists would want to go to those places. And I think that has been the approach that we have taken, and I believe our AKTC has has subscribed to, the fact that it's about local economic development, it's about local communities, it's about local area transformation, that is relevant for those local communities. Anybody else would like to take any other questions before we conclude the session? Because there's no, that we just come past 5. If not, the MC seems to want to conclude the session. So yes.
Thank you. I just want to
Yes,
respond
Shiraz.
to the last question, Hamdan, that
Yes.
AKTC is not focused on tourism, as you said. Nobody wants to go to Afghanistan, let's face it, or Syria right now. But what we are focused on is creating models. We can't do it all. So what we like to do is create a model for the government or municipalities to replicate. And we're seeing that in Cairo now, where our park has been so successful. The government is building 5 more parks. They've come to our park to learn. They've taken the same designers that we had for our parks, and they're even replicating some of the design language. So that for us is it's going to challenge us, but it's a success for us as well, that the government now is seeing the benefit of this.
Can I just respond to that? I think in our endeavor to upgrade spaces, right? My attitude is that we're doing it for the people we love. We're doing it for the communities that we serve. And we do the best we can, right? And that's our endeavor, that's our mission, that's our principle. If it does well for the locals, I'm happy, right? But if other people want to come and enjoy your culture, enjoy your efforts, somebody else will have to manage that. But it cannot stop us from doing what we have promised to do. And that will always be the criteria on which we base our actions. I mean, that's the other side of the coin, right? I cannot say now, oh, I'm not going to improve the port because you're going to bring more ships, right? It's just that you have to improve the public spaces and you do it for the people that are of the place. But because you do it so well, as you have done and as we have done in Penang, everybody wants to come. Now, somebody else has to manage that, and somebody else has to realize that you cannot kill, the golden goose. You have to do something about it. And there are other ramifications that come together with traffic, with overbuilding, with, development, etc., etc. Somebody else has to take account of that.
With that, I'd probably like to thank Louis and Lawrence for a wonderful sharing, and I think plenty of learnings. There's much that can be taken back in terms of hopefully that it will give confidence and inspiration for whoever would like to adopt and probably leverage on what has been shared. But I hope also that if there is interest in this, please reach out to the Aga Khan Trust or to Think City. There's an exhibition that has been showcased downstairs at the foyer, and there's a bit of refreshment on which we can all mingle around and have further conversations. With that, I pass over back to the floor to the MC.
All right. Thank you so much to the speakers and moderator for the very insightful session. So we would like to request for the moderator and speaker to remain on stage for a photo op session. All right, we have another photo op session. We would like to invite our distinguished guests, Muhammad Azlan bin Abdul Majid, Timbalan Setiausaha Bahagian Dasar Kebudayaan, MOTEK, Professor Emeritus Dato Dr. Zuraina Majid, Mr. Shiraz Ali Bai, Director of Historic Cities Program, AKTC, and Mr. Zain Fancy, President of Ismaili Civic Group. Okay, once again, we'd like to thank the speaker and moderators, our distinguished guests, and also everyone that came and attend for this speaker session for today. That concludes our program for this insightful afternoon. And as mentioned by Hamdan just now, we also like to invite you to enjoy the refreshments and explore the exhibition area on level 1. So for your information, we have an exhibition that features case studies by Think City and AKTC at the ground floor, sorry. So the refreshment is on the first floor and the exhibition is on the ground floor. So this exhibition will be open for the next 7 days. Feel free to extend the invitation to your friends and contacts to visit and delve deeper into the rich content and learning shared today. Thank you for being part of this engaging seminar and exhibition. Have a wonderful day.